Today is the day that I show you how to travel around Europe without having to get a Schengen visa. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through every single country across Europe that I have read a book that is set in. For some of these, it will also be a book where the author comes from there, but for a couple of these, it's just a book that is set there. This was the easiest way that I could go to tick off as many countries in Europe as possible, but there are a couple of countries out there that I definitely want to add onto this, and also that I want to read a book that is written by an author from that country. There is a distinction between the European Union and Europe. The European Union is made up of 27 countries, but the entire continent of Europe is actually made up of 43 different countries. And for this video, I have chosen to go with the continent of Europe, not just the European Union. This opens up a couple of other countries that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to add in here. I think we should start off with the most obvious ones. Ireland is obviously going to be a big hitter on this list. I am from Ireland. I love reading books about Ireland, set in Ireland by Irish authors. So there were so many options that I could have picked from here. I could have gone from any of the books that I have read in March of this year. I could have gone with any of the books that I've read in March any other year across my life. But I decided to go with one of my favourite books by one of my favourite Irish authors. And that is Rachel's Holiday by Marian Keyes. This does follow Rachel, who is living in New York at the start of this book. And she's living a bit of a life of high debauchery. She has a cocaine addiction, she has an alcohol addiction, and she's basically living a very high octane life. One night when she comes home from a party, her roommates notice that she has left a note behind and Rachel is found unconscious in the bathroom. Rachel's parents are called and they bring her back to Ireland where she's going to spend time in the cloisters. What Rachel thinks is going to be a spa 6-week vacation is actually 6 weeks of a stay in a rehabilitation centre where Rachel is hopefully going to get her life back on track. This is one of my favourite books by Marian Keyes. I think it might actually be one of my favourite books of all time. I absolutely love how touching it is, how realistic and how very true to life that it can be, especially for people dealing with any type of addiction. And it has so much heart and so much humour across every single page of this book. Next up is another one of the big hitters. The UK is a huge publishing empire. There are so many book publishers in the UK that also have branches across the US. So obviously this one was also going to appear quite a lot throughout my book history. But again, I've chosen to go for one of my favourite books by one of my favourite authors just to represent the entire country. And that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the first book in the Brown Sister trilogy. If you had to ask me, my favourite book of the trilogy is actually Dani Brown's book, and my favourite of the sisters is Eve Brown. But I think that I should tell you about Chloe Brown because that is where the adventure all starts off. You meet all three of the sisters, you get to know all three of their personalities and all three of what they do for a living. I absolutely adore these series because they are so representative. They have so much put into every single book. All three of the sisters have completely different and distinct personalities, and I love that about them. They feel cohesive as sisters, and you definitely can tell that they're the same family, same upbringing, but they are very much an individual. They are very much their own people, and I absolutely love that. But as I said, these are also highly representative. Chloe in this book suffers from fibromyalgia, Dani is bisexual, and Eve is questioning her neurodiversity as we're getting towards the end of her book. I adore these books, and if somebody comes to me and asks where they should start with romance, or if they're looking to kind of up the ante on the spicy books that they've been reading, I throw a copy of this book at them instantly. On to another obvious choice, and Germany. I've been living in Germany for about 7 years now, so you would expect that I will have read a book that is set in Germany, and I have, but I actually read this before I even thought about moving to Germany. I read The Book Thief by Markus Zusak when I was about 18 or 19 or so. This is a historical fiction book which is set in the time of World War II, and it is actually narrated by Death, who, as you can imagine, is taking time out of a very busy schedule to narrate the book. It also follows Liesel Memminger, who is about 10 or 12 years old at the start of the book, and her mother is going on the run from the Nazis as she is a communist. And Liesel and her younger brother are to be adopted by a family called the Hubermans, who are living in a small town near Munich. However, while Liesel and her brother are on the way to Mölking, he actually loses his life while he's on the train, and Liesel is sent to the family by herself. I absolutely adore the connection that forms between Liesel and Hans, who is her adopted father, and the kind of struggle that she has in getting along with her adoptive mother. I also really love the insight of what world was like during World War II in Germany, how much of a struggle it was for people to just get by, what it was like to go to the book burning ceremonies that would have happened in the town square so often, how it was to basically wake up in the middle of the night because your town was about to be raided. It really does paint a fantastic picture of what the world was like back then, and it doesn't shy away at all from showing you what the horror of the war was really like. But of course, if you want to see an actual depiction of what World War II was like, from the Netherlands, I read The Diary of Anne Frank by Anne Frank. This was written by Anne herself while she was in hiding in a small, tiny annex in a house in Amsterdam with her family and with 2 other families and a single man who had been living with them as well. This was very much a young girl's diary. I think Anne was about 13 or 14 while she was writing it. And it really does just show you what life was like for a young girl coming to puberty and starting to discover her sexuality and who she was as a person, all while her world was so small, confined to just that small house, and while she and her family were hiding from the Nazis. I was enthralled by this book. I don't think it's right to say that I love it, considering what it's all about and what was happening in the world at the time. I don't think loving it is exactly the system that you want to go through here, but I was so spellbound by it. I haven't read it in a couple of years, and it's definitely one that I'm going to go back to at some stage. But if you do want to get a depiction of what daily life was like for people who genuinely did fear for their safety, this is a pretty good way to go about it. Let's move a little bit north up to Scandinavia. For Denmark, I read The Cute Cafe in Copenhagen by Julie Kaplan. This is the first book in the Romantic Escape series, and Julie writes books that are set basically across the entire continent of Europe, across the whole world, and they all have such cozy vibes. They all have something to do with baking or with food, and that is something that I absolutely love seeing in a book. The Cute Cafe in Copenhagen follows Kate, who is working as a publicist in London, and she feels like she has got the perfect life lined out for her. She and her boyfriend are getting on super well, and she is in line for huge promotion at work that it turns out her boyfriend is stealing behind her back. Feeling completely betrayed by all of this, Kate decides that she needs to go on a break. So she is going to join with a little food group who are going on a trip to Copenhagen, and she is basically going to write about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. She's going to fill out the publications that they have to write up for, and she's basically going to be their publicist while they're on the trip. Not only does Kate fall in love with Copenhagen and with the hygge vibes that Denmark has, but she also starts to catch the eye of a baker at a local cafe. For Sweden, I have read a couple of books by Fredrik Backman, but one of my favourite books of his is Beartown. This is set in Beartown, a small town in northern Sweden where hockey is king. The entire hockey team is seen as gods among men. They cannot do anything wrong, and they are just about to go and play in a massive championship game where, if they win, they are going to be promoted to the next level and to the next league in the competition. They win, and there is a huge party to celebrate this afterwards. But one of the attendees at the party is sexually assaulted by one of the men on the team. This opens up an entire discussion in the town about them versus us, she versus him, what she said versus what he said, victim blaming, victim shaming, slut shaming, and how much of a pedestal we can put sports people on. This book absolutely encapsulated me, but I did need 2 times to try it out. Myself and my friend Paige from Pages with Paige attempted to buddy read this together back in July of 2020-2021, I want to say. And I think that was the wrong time for both of us. We both needed a separate time to just get involved with this book in a separate way. Paige and I then separately read it at different times, and both of us fell in love with it. Both of us ended up giving these books 5 stars, and I still have got the other 2 books in the series that I need to finish. So I need to read Us Against You, and I also need to read The Winners. I know that it's a book that you need to be in a specific headspace for to be able to read it, but if you can, I implore you to go and pick these ones up. For a book set in Finland, I have read Christmas at Frozen Falls by Kylie Dunbar. This book follows Sylvie, who, instead of spending Christmas on her honeymoon, is actually going to be spending it at home in Cheshire on her own. Her to-be husband called the wedding off a week before it was to happen, and her life is in complete spin at the moment. Her best friend Nari notices this, and to bring Sylvie's spirits back up, she proposes that the two of them go on a little trip to see the Northern Lights in Finland. Sylvie starts to pack up and she gets all of her stuff ready, but she realizes that on the itinerary is the hometown of her ex-boyfriend Stellan. He is the one that got away, and she is convinced that this is how she's going to get him back. For a book that is set in Norway and that was written by a Norwegian author, I have read Summer Island by Natalie Norman. This is actually Natalie's first book written in English, and she is a very prolific author in Norwegian. So it was a really great opportunity for me to discover her while she was writing in a language that was more accessible for me. This book follows Jack, who is living on a small island off the coast of Norway, and this is basically where he should always have been. He moved here from London a couple of years ago because he wanted to escape the hustle and bustle that the capital city has and wanted a much quieter life where he could go about his daily business basically unnoticed by everyone around him. This isn't exactly what Nini Toft has in store for her when she moves to Summer Island to try and get over a breakup. She is basically looking to get involved with everything that is happening in the community, to meet new friends, and she and Jack basically clash heads over this as soon as she arrived. But as the summer starts to go on, the heat starts to rise between the two of them. Something that I also really love about this book is that it is set in the month of May, and May 17th is the national holiday in Norway, so you get to see a couple of things that are happening around May 17th. You get to see more about the traditional dress that people will wear on that day, the celebrations that they have, the foods that they eat, and I love seeing depictions of people celebrating their heritage and celebrating their national holidays, so this was definitely something I wanted to see in that book. For a book set in Iceland, I've read The Northern Lights Lodge by Julie Kaplan. This is again part of the Romantic Escape series, and this one is following Lucy, who also needs to escape the UK following heartbreak and following a bit of a breakdown in her career. She is hired as the manager for the Northern Lights Lodge Hotel, which is going to be a huge tourist bring-in for the country of Iceland, where people can stay, go out on a trip to see the Northern Lights, and then travel around Iceland on their own. When Lucy gets here, she sets out to make it Iceland's #1 destination, but what she doesn't expect is that she is going to fall head over heels in love with Alex, who is the Scottish bartender and manager of the hotel, and is the grumpiest person she has ever seen. Stretching out a little bit further across the continent, for a book that is set in the Czech Republic, or as it's known now, Czechia, I read A Year and a Day by Isabel Broom. This follows 3 separate women, Megan, Hope, and Sophie, who have all come to Prague for a getaway with a partner or with a friend, or are waiting for their partner to come and to visit them while they are here. And everything starts to kind of turn for the women as they're there. Megan is here with her friend Ollie, who she has always had feelings for, but he has never had anything back for her until they are spellbound by the lights and by the charm of Prague, and things really start to turn for them. Hope is quite disappointed because she's here with her partner Charlie, who she's in a new relationship with, but her family are not super on board with the idea of this relationship. Hope has been recently widowed, and they feel like it's a little bit too early for Hope and Charlie to be starting a new relationship. But while they are there, sparks really start to fly between them, not particularly in the way that their family might be hoping for. And Sophie is here on her own while waiting for her boyfriend Robin to come and meet her while she's in Prague, but his arrival might be starting to take a little bit longer than she was expecting to. For a book set in France, I have read Heartstopper Volume 3 by Alice Oseman. This book follows Nick and Charlie, who are 2 boys in their senior years in secondary school in the UK, but across this book, they are going on a class trip to Paris. I adore this book. This is my favorite book of the entire series. You get to see Nick and Charlie's relationship develop as they go out on their own, as they have a little bit more freedom away from their parents, but are still very much under the watchful eye of their teachers. As there are 2 schools going on this trip, you also get to see their entire friendship group really connect with one another. You get to see other relationships forming. You get to see stronger relationships forming between 2 of the characters. And also, you get to notice that 2 of the teachers have really started to fall for one another as well. This is, as I've said, my absolute favorite book in the entire series. And I implore you, if you have any kind of need for a really cozy, really heartwarming series in your life, go and pick up the Heartstopper series. For Greece, I've read My Map of You by Isabel Broom. This was Isabel's debut, written way back in 2016, and it follows Holly, whose aunt has just recently passed away, but has left her a holiday home in Zakynthos, one of the islands off the coast of Greece, which Holly is going to take over. Holly's not super excited about that, but her relationship has just broken down and she thinks that this might be the best way to get her heart back in shape. She heads out to the house to get it ready to sell it on, but while she is in Zakynthos, she starts to fall in love with her neighbour Aidan, who is Irish and who has moved into the villa next door. But he knows a couple of things about Holly's aunt that she never knew at all. This book has a special place in my heart because it was the first arc that I ever received back when I was a book blogger, so it will always be one that has just a little bit of an extra meaning for me. But it's also a really nice way to get to know a little bit more about Greece and to see what those seas in Santorini are really like. For a book set in Italy, I have read The Place We Met by Isabel Broom. This follows Taggy and Lucy. Taggy is working as a tour guide around Lake Como and she has completely fallen in love with the place, whereas Lucy is taking her boyfriend Peter to Lake Como for the first time. And the two women are about to meet and their lives are about to collide in a way neither of them had ever expected it to happen. You might expect a book that is set in Italy to take place during the summer, but this is actually set around Christmas and New Year, which I think was such an interesting way to depict the country. You think about Italy, you think about sunshine, you think about long stretching out days, but I think a Christmas in Italy sounds just as cozy as anywhere else. For a book set in Spain, I read Then Now Always, also by Isabel Broom. This book is set in Andalusia, and it is following Hannah, who's going to the area on a month-long workation with her colleagues. She's so excited for this because on the trip is going to be her best friend Tom, but also her boss Theo, who Hannah has had feelings for ever since she joined the company, and she's pretty sure that this is going to be the time that she's going to snatch him up. All that can happen while they are around each other, though, is that Hannah feels like she is making a complete show of herself. But the final straw happens when Nancy, Hannah's younger sister, actually turns up on the holiday as well, and chaos starts to ensue. I absolutely love a kind of a workplace banter book, and this book is completely full of that. So if you love seeing workplace banter, but also want a book that is set around the ocean and that you can read while you are lounging under the sun this summer, this is definitely the one to pick up. For a book set in Portugal, I read Hello Again by Isabel Broom, and this book is actually set across 3 different cities in 3 different countries. It starts off in Lisbon in Portugal, then you go to Hamburg in Germany and Barcelona in Spain. It is about Pepper, who joins her friend Josephine on a little trip around Europe, and while she's in Portugal, she meets a man named Finn, and the two of them get along with each other swimmingly from the word go. Finn decides that he is going to join the two ladies on their little trip around Europe, but as they start to travel around the continent, they learn that things with Finn are not what they had initially seemed to be. This one has got a little bit more of a suspense to the other Isabel Broom books that I have read and recommended, so if you want something that's got a little bit more of an adventure in it, this one is definitely the one to go and pick up. For a book set in Croatia, I read The Secret Cove in Croatia by Julie Kaplan. This is the 5th book in the Romantic Escape series, and is following Maddie, who is going to be working on a luxury yacht off the coast of Croatia for most of the summer. They're going to be island hopping across the Adriatic Sea, and on board the ship is also going to be Nick. He is her best friend Nina's older brother, and this is the first time that she's meeting him because they've not really met each other's families before, but Maddie has no idea how Nick and Nina could ever be related to one another. While Nina is the most gentle and sweet person that Maddie has ever met, Nick is a complete disaster. He is so horrible to other people, he's very fiery, and their personalities clash pretty much as soon as they meet one another. As they are confined to the small little galley kitchen on the yacht, things really start to thaw between the two of them. This was my favourite of the Romantic Escape series, and it definitely sold Croatia to me as a holiday destination. It's definitely one that I'm going to check out, if not this summer, then next summer coming. So if you have any kind of a wanderlust but you don't know where you want to go on a holiday, this might be the one to sell Croatia to you. For Switzerland, I read The Little Swiss Ski Chalet, also by Julie Kaplan. This is the 7th book of the Romantic Escape series, and it's following Minna, who is a food technician, and her most recent date has gone viral for all the wrong reasons. Things went completely south as soon as she had met the guy that she was on a date with, and she decides to escape everything that is going on with her by going to her grandmother's chalet in Switzerland. Her grandmother was a chocolatier, but she also had a side hustle as a ski instructor or owned a ski chalet. Minna decides that that's how she's going to spend the winter. She's going to cozy up in her grandmother's ski chalet, drink copious amounts of hot chocolate, and basically master the craft of tempering chocolate. She has absolutely zero time for a romance in her life until she meets with a handsome ski instructor who lives just down the street. That is every single country across Europe that I have read a book that is set in or that has an author that comes from there. Have you read any books set in Europe, or have you ever been to Europe? If you have, what is your favorite country there? If you'd love to leave me a comment, but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then I would love you to leave me the European flag emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.